Good morning, everyone. Today's webinar is going to mainly focus on financial aid. If you know me, you know I get really excited when I'm talking about money. So you can watch the other webinars for a recap of where you should be, but we're going to go ahead and dive right in to save some time. Today's webinar is going to hopefully help you find money no matter what your plans are after high school. FAFSA, CADAA, and WASFA aren't just for four-year college. They're also for community college, trade schools, and technical programs. Even if you're still figuring out your plans, filing by your priority deadline will ensure you have the best packages available to you when you make your decision later this spring. So by the end of this webinar, you should hopefully know the difference between FAFSA, CADAA, and WASFA. You might need to talk to your family about which one makes the most sense for you to fill out. We'll do a quick review of the different types of aid, slow down a little bit once we start talking about deciding between FAFSA, CADAA, and WASFA. And then we'll do some quick hits on deadlines, tricky circumstances, scholarships, and general reminders before I let you all go. For context, the trainings I attended to get ready to fill out the financial aid applications were all at least an hour, most were 2 to 3. And so I want to highlight the most important need to know information. And if you have questions, feel free to just ask and reach out. We'll start with talking about the different types of aid. After this, you'll use the information to help you decide between FAFSA, CADAA, and WASFA. There's a summary at the top of your handout with some of these key terms. And because it won't directly impact what you need to do, I'll move quickly. But this context, again, is really important for you to know so that you can go back and talk to your family. We have these three main buckets of where the money will come from: federal, state, and institutional aid. So federal aid comes from the federal government. Think Washington, D.C., the White House. We're looking at the whole United States. This should hopefully sound familiar because I know y'all are paying attention to AP Gov right now. State aid comes from the state government. So we're looking at California and Washington. And the last piece of aid, which you might not have heard about, is institutional aid. And this is what comes from the school, the college, or the program that you're enrolled in. Although private schools have high tuition, there are going to be instances where institutional aid comes through and can make it cheaper to go to a private compared to a public school. So it kind of really just depends. It's also why it's really important to fill out these financial aid applications so that you get the most money possible and you can see what might be cheaper for you. So the previous slide was where the money is coming from. When they offer you aid, there's going to be a few different types. The first one are grants and scholarships. This is usually eligible through some sort of status that you have or your merit, which is like your grades and stuff like that. Essentially, grants and scholarships are free money that you don't need to pay back, and it's the best type of aid. It's what we want you all to be getting right now. In the middle here, you'll kind of see work study. Work study is money you receive in exchange for working on campus or with a community partner in the local area. Typically, this can be a little easier to get than just applying to other jobs. And so you are receiving money in return for work. The last type of aid that you might receive are loans, and loans need to be repaid. There's two different types here. We have subsidized, which is what you want, and unsubsidized loans. With subsidized loans, the loan won't accrue interest until you graduate. So if you take out like $5,000 your freshman year, you'll owe $5,000 at the end of your senior year. On the other hand, with unsubsidized loans, these will accrue interest the moment you take that money out. And so if you're looking at, say, a $5,000 loan freshman year and it's accruing interest at about 6% a year, by the time you graduate, you'll owe $6,200. So an extra $1,200 by the time you graduate. The types of aid that the school is offering will be on your acceptance letter. So we'll dive into more details later when you have something actual to look at. The important takeaway here is that filling out your financial aid application early will maximize the chances of the best types of aids like grants and scholarships, no matter what you decide to do next. Here's where I'm going to slow down a little bit because deciding between FAFSA and CADAA and WASFA can be a big decision for some folks. Let's go ahead and start talking to some of the differences. FAFSA eligibility is based on your status and not your parents. So you'll be eligible for FAFSA if you're a US citizen or an eligible non-citizen. If you're an eligible non-citizen, you'll have one of these documents: a green card, an I-94 or an I-797, or a T visa. Now, just because you have a social security number doesn't mean you're automatically eligible. There are some special circumstances here. If you are a DACA recipient, you will have a social security number, but you're not eligible for FAFSA. So if this is you, you're going to be filling out the CADAA or the WASFA instead. If you're a non-citizen, you will have a social security number, but you're not eligible for FAFSA. So if this is you, you're going to be filling out the CADAA or the WASFA instead. Talk to your parents first if you aren't sure. They'll have more information on your documents. If you have questions after that, feel free to reach out to your mentor, your dean of expeditions, or set up a meeting with me and we can kind of go through your status. Here are some FAFSA specifics. FAFSA grants you access to federal, state, and institutional aid. So everything from grants to loans. The nice thing is that FAFSA is more streamlined than in the past. So if you're eligible and you create your FSA ID on studentaid.gov, your identity is instantly verified using your social security number. Each contributor that you invite, so this is probably your parents, more on this later, is going to need their own FSA ID. This, again, is easier if everyone has a social security number. If you have an older sibling who also went to college, your parents probably already have an FSA ID because they had to file FAFSA also for your older sibling. Something that we really want to highlight is an important part to FAFSA is consenting to DDX, or direct data exchange. If a single contributor, you or your parents, doesn't consent to DDX, you will only be considered for unsubsidized loans, which can severely raise the cost of college. Remember, unsubsidized loans is both money you have to pay back and it accrues interest the moment you take that money out. Now, because there is an electronic exchange of information, some of you might have concerns about DDX, especially if you come from a mixed status family. I'll talk a little bit more about this after I go over CADAA and WASFA, since that can affect your decision. Okay, on to CADAA and WASFA. There are some eligibility differences between the two, but both applications were created for students who can't complete the FAFSA due to their immigration status. The idea is to allow every single student who grew up here to access state and institutional aid, even if they're not eligible for federal aid. The cool thing is that recently both California and Washington also expanded access to mixed status families. So I'll talk about eligibility next. So here's how it breaks down for each state. In California, you'll be eligible for CADAA if you qualify for AB 540 or you come from a mixed status family. To qualify for AB 540, you needed to have attended California schools for 3 or more years. This doesn't have to all be at the same time. So if you were in California for like 2 years in elementary school, you moved away and then moved back for your senior year, that would still count. In Washington, it is a little bit more flexible. If you lived in Washington for at least a year before starting college or another post-secondary program, you count as a Washington resident. So as long as you were with us since the beginning of the school year, you're good to go. Even if you're eligible for FAFSA, if there's for whatever reason you have concerns about the data exchange or anything like that, you can still apply through WASFA. In both cases, you will sign an affidavit confirming your status when you fill out the application. The word affidavit sounds scarier than it is. You check a box and you just type your name and just confirming that, like, hey, like, I am being honest about my status. I included links on the slide and in the description box below that links directly to CSAC and WASAC guidance. So go ahead and check those out if you want a little bit more information. For some of you, it's going to be straightforward to figure out which application to fill out. If you and your parents are citizens and or eligible non-citizens, if your family has social security numbers and have filed taxes before, you would likely be filling out the FAFSA. On the other hand, if you know you're undocumented or otherwise ineligible for FAFSA, then you would be filling out CADAA or WASFA. Then we have what is called a mixed status family. This is when you are eligible for FAFSA, so you're a citizen or an eligible non-citizen, but one or more of your parents are not. In this case, you actually get to choose if you want to fill out FAFSA or CADAA or WASFA. And we want to make sure that you have the right information so you can talk to your parents about which application is the right one for you. Right now, as of October 2025, there are protections in place that limit how the data on FAFSA is used. According to current law, information shared on FAFSA cannot be shared with immigration enforcement. That being said, if the law changes, those protections can be lifted. If you choose to file FAFSA, you and your parents must consent to DDX in order to be eligible for anything other than subsidized loans. Once you give your consent, the DDX allows the IRS to send tax information to the Department of Education, which then keeps that information on file. Again, right now that information is protected by current law, but that can change if the law changes. If your parents have filed taxes in the past using an IT number or some other method, the IRS already has their information. DDX links your parents' tax information with your FAFSA, and that's lives with the Department of Education. If your parent did not file taxes, then inputting information into FAFSA would document more information about them. And so if you want to think about this as like data access, um, if your parents have already filed taxes, originally it was just with the IRS, and when you file FAFSA, then people can access that information through the FAFSA also, or through the Department of Education. Again, that information is protected right now, but it can change. If you or your family have concerns about DDX and would rather choose not to consent, you can still apply for state and institutional aid through CADAA or WASFA. CSAC and WASAC, the two state organizations that manage those applications, don't share data at all with the federal government. This decision is going to look different for every single family. So if you're unsure, you can always schedule time to talk with me or your mentor. If your parents want to be part of that conversation, let me know, and we can try to find time when your parents are off work to like have the conversation all together. The last financial aid application I want to talk about is the CSS Profile. This is a supplemental application to FAFSA, WASFA, or CADAA that a private school might ask you to fill out. It is managed by College Board, and if your family makes under $100,000, you might qualify for some fee waivers. The CSS profile is a lot more detailed than even FAFSA or any of the other applications. And so you want to make sure you leave time to complete it. In the link that are in the top right corner, there is a checklist of things that you want to just have all together before you get started on the CSS profile. As always, if you have questions, let us know. If this is the first time you're filling out forms like this, it can feel intimidating, which is pretty normal. I'd recommend exploring the practice materials on this slide, which are also linked in the description box. FAFSA has an actual website where you can go in and like click around, see what everything looks like. And then for CADAA and WASFA, I link the paper applications. So you can just quickly glance through to see the information that you're filling out. The online application is much better. You should do that. But at least with the paper application, you can see what's going on. In the table below, I also included links to the applications themselves and a list of documents you want to gather before you sit down to fill out the application. For FAFSA, you will need to make the FSA ID before filling out your FAFSA form. This is all done on the same website, studentaid.gov. And like I said before, the process is a lot more streamlined this year where you should be able to get approved right away as long as you have a social security number. If you have questions, please reach out. We'll talk about some school events that can help you in just a little bit. So going through a financial aid application, like I said, can feel intimidating and you might want to take your time. When do you actually need to get this all done by? So as always, deadlines will vary depending on the college that you're applying to. No matter which form you end up filling out, meeting your priority deadlines is like super important here. These deadlines give you the best chance to get offered grants and scholarships, especially at expensive private schools. If you don't meet the priority deadline, the money for aid can run out and you might be left with just loans as options. Deadlines will change from year to year. So if you look at your handout and turn to the back, the deadline for state schools is on there for this year. For private schools, the priority deadline can range anywhere from early November to late February. So you want to make sure you look up and Google your deadlines right after this webinar, write them down so you don't miss something. If you're applying early action or early decision, those are usually November 1st or November 15th. You should also plan to submit your financial aid application by that deadline. This means that when you get your admissions decision, they can package your financial aid offer within that letter. So this is all a lot to manage. Summit is committed to offering Cash for College events at every single school to help you. Now, these events are typically in December or January. On your handout, there are some exact dates for your school. If you're unable to attend Cash for College night, or you have an early priority deadline before Cash for College night, you can always reach out directly for support. I did want to share some online sessions you can attend with some of our community partners. Again, we have CSAC and WASAC for CADAA and WASFA. Either of those two would be helpful for FAFSA. So if you go to those links that are on the screen, there's like a calendar and you can just sign up for those Zoom sessions. For those of you who have family members who would be more comfortable doing this from home, we would strongly encourage you to check out the online session so you're not trying to figure it out on your own. If you have all of your documents, filling out an application takes about 30 to 60 minutes. Um, Most people, if you bring all your documents, are able to submit during Cash for College night. So that's probably the best option if you have time to wait until Cash for College night. And there we can walk through things together. There are some areas of the FAFSA that are kind of tricky, so I wanted to highlight these for you. Similar questions might show up on WASFA and CADAA, so everyone should pay attention here. The first section that folks have a lot of questions about is the dependency status. Now, everybody probably wants to be independent because that means that only you fill out FAFSA and you typically will qualify for more aid because your parents' salaries aren't considered. You can only file for dependency if you fall into one of 7 specific categories. The form will specifically ask you about this, and it's all part of your application. So just make sure you read and answer each section honestly. At the end of the day, most of you will be classified as dependent. However, if you feel like you have a special circumstance or an unusual circumstance, just let us know in your X ticket and we can reach out to try to help figure things out with you. If you are considered dependent, you will need to invite one or both of your biological or legal parents as your contributors. Even if you live with a relative, your parent or parents must be the ones that are invited, even if they live overseas. I linked a handy tool from studentaid.gov to help you determine who is a contributor. If that doesn't clarify it for you, feel free to reach out with any questions that you have. Remember that every single contributor on FAFSA must consent to DDX for you to get access to federal and state grants. If you live in Washington and you know your parents will not consent, we highly recommend you apply through WASFA instead. Again, in California, it's a little bit more limited. And so you can go back to that slide to figure out if you qualify for CADAA if you don't want to consent to DDX. Once you figure out who your contributors are, the invite process is much smoother now. No matter how many contributors you have, the first thing you're going to do is start your section of the FAFSA. Once you fill out your portion and you click through all the screens, you're going to get a section where you invite your contributors using their email. If your parent or parents have a FSA ID already, make sure that you use the same email of their FSA ID account. If you have an older sibling who went to college and your parents fill out FAFSA for your older sibling, they should already have an account. If your parents don't have an FSA ID already, the email that you send them will ask them to make an account. They'll put in their social security number, get verified, and then you just continue filling out the application after that. Another section that can be confusing is the number of people that are considered to be in your household. In general, this is going to include your parents, you, your siblings, and any other adults who live with your parents and receive at least 50% of their financial support from them. Let me give you an example. If your parents support your grandparents, but your grandparents don't live with you, they will not count towards the household size. It's very important that we're looking at who your parents are living with. Now, if your parents live overseas with an aunt and they provide financial support to your aunt because she's sick or whatever, then your aunt would be considered part of your household since your parents are the ones who are your contributors and your aunt lives with your parents. Again, more questions might come up, but this webinar is already getting kind of long. So I'm going to go ahead and move us forward and just make sure you're reaching out if you have any questions. I didn't want to leave the financial aid webinar without talking about scholarships since a lot of students have already started asking. In general, we recommend you get your financial aid application done first, unless you are already planning to come to Cash for College night and you know you don't have any priority deadlines that you have to hit. When you're ready, you can start exploring tinyurl.com/SPS scholarships. It's basically going to bring you to a Google Sheet that I try to keep updated as I hear about new opportunities. On that sheet, you'll see some scholarship databases also where you can sign up for accounts and they can match you to scholarships. On there are a few what I consider like lottery scholarships that don't require essays. They're kind of big, they're national. You do have to upload your information, so you have to be comfortable sharing your information. But there's nothing to do besides that except wait to see if your name gets drawn. Go ahead and when you have time, check out the tiny URL and just let us know if you need support, like writing an essay or anything like that. All right, last but not least, we have your reminders and your wrap ups, and then you should go ahead and get started on any of the action items you need to get done. This is the last slide for Washington folks. First, make sure you double check your deadlines, especially if you are applying to private schools. Check if you need the CSS profile and talk to your parents tonight about which application you should fill out. You might need to have just an honest conversation with your parents to sit down and go through things to make sure you know what's the best decision for you and your family. Please, please, please make sure you file your X ticket and use your summit email. If you don't use your summit email, then it will not show up in our data and we won't see that you need support. On your X ticket, there is a question about some special circumstances if things have changed since 2024. Things that might qualify you are if a parent recently lost their job, if someone in your family, in your household, had a major unreimbursed medical expense, like a surgery, there was an accident or something happened, and there was just like a big bill that you guys have to deal with. Something else that might happen is like if there was like some sort of housing instability, if you lost housing, or you had to move somewhere else unexpectedly. These are all things that wouldn't be captured in your taxes, but could qualify you for more financial aid. You don't have to share details in the exit ticket, but letting us know you'll need a little bit of extra help gives us time to reach out to you and to prepare. Since the process of appealing can take a little bit of time. Other actions are on your handout. So if you're able to attend Cash for College with your parents, please make sure to come out. It really is always better to get help in real time. So thanks for your attention, everybody. I know that was a lot of information as it usually is. Washington students, you're free to get started on your action items, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. California students, I have one last thing for you, and you can see there, it's free money, essentially. Okay, California, I am super excited to share this with you because this might not only help you, it might help some of your friends at other schools, and it might even help your younger siblings. I know some of you guys already qualified because I already put in some of your data to see if you do, and quite a lot of our students actually do qualify. So stand up and stretch if you need to, but you'll want to listen up for the next about 5 more minutes. All right, so introducing this thing called CalKIDS. This is a case where our state of California is putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to what we think is important. In 2022, California passed a law that established a scholarship fund for students that typically need a little bit more support. They took a look at all students between first and 12th grade who qualified for free and reduced lunch, who were considered MLL, or who were homeless or foster youth. If you fall into these categories, into one of these categories, and you were here in 2022, it's very likely that there was a $500 account already made in your name, and the only thing you need to do is to go claim that money. Once you're 18, you can use that money for any post-secondary expenses. It can be college, it could be vocational school, trade school, apprenticeships, like whatever that is. And you can use that money for books, tuition. If you need money to buy a computer, you can even use this money for rent if you wanted to. Okay, that's not all. You can actually link the money in your CalKIDS account to a 529 college savings account. The earnings from a 529 account aren't taxed if it's used for the eligible expenses I mentioned in the previous slide. A parent or grandparent would need to open the account. And if you want to do this, our recommendation, or I guess my recommendation, is to have a grandparent open the account since that means the money doesn't need to be reported on FAFSA or CADAA if that's available to you. With permission from your parents or grandparents, you can actually log into your 529 account after you link your money, and you can practice investing that money. Again, all your earnings are tax advantaged. And so if 2 years ago you knew about this, and you actually put all $500 into NVIDIA, that $500 would actually be worth about $1,200, and none of it would be taxed when you use that money. Putting all your money into one stock is actually super risky and it's not advised, but you get the idea of like what you could do with this money to make it grow. You have until you're 26 to claim and use this money. So you don't have to use the money right away if you want to invest it and experiment a little bit. you do want to be careful. Like at the end of the day, this is now your money. And if the market crashes, you will lose that money. So um, make good decisions. I did try to find a system where I could check everybody's eligibility, but unfortunately, the team at CalKIDS is doing a lot with a very small team, and so I wasn't able to establish a partnership with them. So here are the instructions for you to so you can go check if you qualify. Um, you'll probably want your transcript, so you have your SID, your state ID. But once you have that, you'll go to calkids.org. Once you scroll down, you'll find these two buttons. The first thing you want to do is to click the confirm eligibility button. Once you do that, you'll select student, you'll type in your SSID, and if you're eligible, they'll just be like, hey, you're eligible. Here's a button to go claim your scholarship money. If you're eligible, please make sure you claim your money with a personal email. Um, Once you graduate from Summit, you might lose access to your account. And so use a personal email that you'll check so that you'll always have access. And that's it. Again, tell your families and your friends who are in California, they might qualify also. For the next few years, California is going to continue opening up new accounts for all first graders. It's not just going to be for the people I mentioned earlier, right? It's not just for free and reduced lunch, MLL, so on and so forth. California is actually opening up accounts for every single first grader, regardless of status, as long as they're a first grader in a California school. Share the information. Your friends and families might have to go get their younger siblings SSIDs. Once they have that, they can log in, claim the money, and then just like decide what to do with that money as a family. That's all for me for today. If you have any questions, please reach out. Happy to connect you with any resources so that you can get a little bit more information about CalKIDS. But other than that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and hope to see you soon.